mother of all bomb which has been used by the United States and, of course, strategically on the Afpak border. In fact, it was a significant development. The United States of America dropped the GBU-43, or what is otherwise known as the mother of all bombs, on an ISIS target in Afghanistan. The bomb was dropped at 7 p.m. local time in Afghanistan and is the biggest non-nuclear bomb which explodes in mid-air to cause maximum damage on a very large area. Now, this is the first time that this bomb has been used in battle. Well, according to U.S. officials, the target was an ISIS cave and tunnel complex in the Achin district. In fact, the White House press secretary has already come out and said that the United States has taken the fight against ISIS very seriously and has tried to ensure that they deny them the operational space. In fact, after this bomb was dropped, United States President Donald Trump too hailed it as another successful job. However, significantly, the former Afghan President Hamid Karzai has condemned the use of this in Afghanistan, saying that it is not war on terror, but the inhuman use of Afghanistan as a testing ground for new and dangerous weapons of mass destruction by the United States.
We are so proud of our military, and it was another successful event. We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual. So we have given them total authorization, and that's what they're doing. And frankly, that's why they've been so successful lately. If you look at what's happened over the last 8 weeks and compare that really to what's happened over the last 8 years, you'll see there's a tremendous difference, So we have incredible leaders in the military, and we have incredible military, and we are very proud of them. And this was another very, very successful mission.
Around 7 p.m. local time in Afghanistan last night, the United States military used a GBU-43 weapon in Afghanistan. The GBU-43 is a large, powerful, and accurately delivered weapon. We targeted a system of tunnels and caves that ISIS fighters used to move around freely, making it easier for them to target U.S. military advisors and Afghan forces in the area. The United States takes the fight against ISIS very seriously, and in order to defeat the group, we must deny them operational space, which we did. The United States took all precautions necessary to prevent civilian casualties and collateral damage as a result of the operation.
Well, in fact, joining us now, a very senior journalist, Gautam Mukherjee. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here. Now, the significance of this air bomb, which has been exploded by the United States, as everyone calls it in colloquial usage, the mother of all bombs. It's not just a military statement, sir. It's a political one as well.
Yeah, well, the first thing about this is Trump's way of doing things, which is giving a lot of authority to the military. He has not taken, pride of place in this and said, I ordered it. He said, I let the military do it. Now, this is often a problem that the political leadership hampers or holds back or, kind of moderates. And
are you hinting at India?
Well, yes, of course. If you let the military leadership get on with it, I don't think you'd have a problem in Kashmir at all.
Really, is that going to be the way forward? Because it's quite interesting. Just a very short while back, we had this breaking news which came in of Manish Tiwari. I'll see if I can find the exact quote.
Yeah, he called it seamless. Yeah.
He said it's seamless terror. If they can do that on Afghanistan, then why can't India do that in Muridke? Do you think that's taking it perhaps a step way too forward?
It's provocative, but I don't think...
it's never going to happen. It's fictional.
We can't go across the border. And it doesn't really, except in things like surgical strikes, it doesn't really serve our purpose unless you really go in and mop up, which I don't think we are in a political or in a military position to do, given that Pakistan, China are combined really right on our doorstep in POK. But it really helps when Trump, who is, the most powerful military in the world, 17 times bigger than the nearest next one. So China may be drumming up all its forces, saying that, we're a military power, but they are 17 times smaller than America. Now, when America goes and drops this, It kills the people that he wants to kill. It degrades the tunnels that otherwise cannot be accessed by lesser bombs. And third, in the blast area are a lot of chaps waiting to come into India. You know,
It is, after all, the Afpak border region
yes,
that we are talking about.
and there are a lot of camps in that area, and generally in that lawless sort of NWFP area of Pakistan, which even Pakistan doesn't
Mr.
really...
Gautam Mukherjee, very interestingly, sorry to interrupt you, that you mentioned the terror camps which are emanating on Pakistan soil. There is a graphics that I'd request our producers to put up of the terror camps in Pakistan, and that is going to be the focus, isn't it? After all, at the end of it, there you have it on our screens. The terror camps in Pakistan, Muzaffarabad, Bakriyal, and also, importantly, all across and along the POK region. These are the terror camps. Do you think Pakistan has ample reasons to worry, considering the strategic location of where this bomb was blasted?
Well, you know, it's not just a matter of the grammar of it. Did they kill terrorists coming or planning to come into India, or did they kill the ones that are in ISIS, Taliban, threatening Afghanistan? What matters is that in the general area, a huge bomb, just short of a nuclear bomb, has been dropped for the first time ever. This means that it changes the paradigm in terms of the muscular response that America is willing to go into. And all of this discussion that, you know, we've got to talk them into surrender is getting degraded alongside. It's not just the fighters and the terrorists that are getting hit, what with their calls for jihad and so forth. It is also their backers, which are, you know, spread around the world, certainly very, very vociferous in India, who says that, you know, we've got to talk, we've got to dialogue, we've got to candle march, we've got to have tea. Now, all of this is not cutting it anymore.
Tea diplomacy doesn't work anymore. In fact, let me bring
Mad
in
Hatter's Tea Party.
the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, as Mr. Mukherjee calls it. In fact, let me bring in Mr. Shiv Mukherjee, a former diplomat who's also joining us. And of course, Ashish Singh, our assistant editor for defense. Well, Ashish, I'll just come to you in a bit. But Mr. Shiv Mukherjee, if you've been hearing out what the other Mukherjee here, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, has been saying, he says tea diplomacy doesn't work. This strike by the United States is nothing short of a paradigm shift as to where the entire global community perhaps needs to look at the war against terror. Would you agree?
Not really. I think we should see this in context. You know, Donald Trump's America is fighting wars in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and in Afghanistan. But Donald Trump has his own private war against his predecessor,
Right.
You know,
He's
making
boasted about it
U-turns,
as well.
on everything the Obama administration did. And one of the things that the Obama administration did, yes, one of the things the Obama administration did towards the end of his tenure was to put some reins on military commanders in the field, taking decisions to use massive force against the opponents, wherever they were, because of the huge amount of criticism that was pouring in around the world on civilian collateral deaths. In fact, right now there are 2 or 3 investigations going on about civilian deaths caused by American actions on the field, and these are investigations being carried out in America. So one of the things that is now being already in the domain, in the public domain in the US and elsewhere, is whether this kind of thing is an escalation, which depends on the fact that Donald Trump has given far more leeway to the military commanders in the field than before, and that will inevitably lead to more civilian collateral deaths. Now, those who want a very heavy hand to be used against terrorists, against Al-Qaeda, against ISIS, against these forces of terror, will of course be heartened by this. But in the context of you know, the kind of conflicts raging around the world, I think it will be a little premature to start gloating over the fact that somebody has taken the gloves off and dropped this mother of all bombs on Afghanistan. Frankly, I don't think it's a paradigm shift. I don't think we are looking at a repetition of this all over the place. I think what we are looking at is an American administration that is decided that criticism of collateral deaths, civilian deaths, doesn't really matter, and that it can be shrugged off because, you know, the message around the world is controlled by and large by the Western press. You have this lonely voice of Karzai talking about Afghanistan being used as a testing ground. But by and large, criticism of this will be muted. So, you know, there are various aspects to this. I don't think, in any case, I don't think we should draw parallels from this to our situation that we face in Kashmir, you know, and start fantasizing about letting the military have full reign in Jammu and Kashmir to, you know, slam everybody who's pelting stones or trying to infiltrate across the border. The situations are completely different. So I think let's not make too much of this.
Of course, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that. A quick word, however, from Ashish. I think you've made a pertinent point, Mr. Shiv Mukherjee, that there is a possibility that it's going to lead to warmongering, all the kind of reactions which have already started coming in from the opposition leaders and also from some of the leaders from within the BJP itself, the ruling coalition. In fact, if I can come to you, Ashish, for a quick word, so far there has been absolutely no ascertained or any kind of a figure which is coming out on the civilian casualties. Is there? After all, a bomb of that magnitude with the kind of radius that it covers, there is a possibility of high civilian casualties, as was rightly being pointed out, and this is something we've seen at the time of a US airstrike in Syria as well.
That's right, Meghna. 21,000-pound bomb, let's say close to 1,000 kilos. It's going to be extremely difficult for the U.S. forces to explain that it has not caused any civilian collateral damage. Now, you just heard it from the diplomats, but what is important here, in fact, I was speaking to a couple of top serving air marshals and the top generals of Indian Air Force and Indian Army, trying to understand how does India look at it, how the Indian forces look at these kind of actions by United States. What they told me is that the parallels cannot be drawn because, see, for example, what they explained to me is Afghanistan, for that matter, hardly has any kind of air defense. There was an MC-130 aircraft of United States force to have easily gone there and conducted the airstrike and dropping this 21,000-pound bomb. This is something which we cannot be exactly replica, in terms of replica can be done, say, by India to Pakistan. Pakistan has strong air defense as well. But yes, what it does, it sets a good precedence for any country like India, which is fighting against terror with its neighbor, to use, if not of this magnitude, at least of some smaller magnitude of action to ensure that the enemy state is taught a lesson, and at least to a certain extent, if not fully, the terror launch pads and the structure there, as US destroyed the web of tunnels, underground tunnels of ISIS, at least the structure can be broken in Pakistan of terror.
But is that even a likely situation? We'll just come back and discuss more of that. But Gautam Mukherjee, I'll give you the opportunity now. Very relevant point there being raised, that can we possibly overlook the civilian collateral damage in a war against terror? Can we really be blind towards it? Is this not blatant warmongering?
One of the points that Ambassador Mukherjee just made is that Trump is looking inwards at his domestic audience partially to get away from the Democrat president that preceded him, who wept copious tears on this business of collateral damage. Trump is a Republican and a hard-right Republican, and his top team consists of a lot of army people and armed forces people. I think he is quite clear that solving the problem is more important than worrying about collateral damage. And this is the parallel I would draw, is not about what India can do across the border. As I've said before, I think that is ruled out for the foreseeable future. We don't have the capacity to sustain that. But
Limited success in surgical strikes.
surgical strikes are a tit for tat kind of thing, a little, let's say, a kick for a slap sort of thing. But, you know, the Pakistanis are using basically cannon fodder against us, and we are using crack troops against them. So they are sending across a lot of people who are totally dispensable, including this, you know, the sort of lieutenant colonel who's gone missing of late. If you look at Pakistan's track record, they don't care whether you give him back, whether he's dead, whether he's alive. They won't even admit he's Pakistani beyond a point. It goes on like that.
So what is going to be the way forward? Should we continue with the policies that we are already continuing?
No, we are going to have to stiffen our stance in India, in J&K, to stop this, which is escalating into we can't hit them because they are children, and we must understand how they feel when they kick our CRPF Jawans, while, you know, they're escalating their side of the whole.
Wouldn't you say, sir, that's a bit hypocritical, considering India has been going to international courts as well about the human right violation, for example, in the war against LTTE as well. We've seen the kind of casualties which have happened, and that is something that India has time and again condemned. How can now India turn around and say it's perfectly fine to have collateral damage?
And a fat lot of good it did them. You know, we had to do it because we have a lot of Tamilians in Tamil Nadu. And so we did it, and everybody ignored us. That's all that happened, even though we are next door to them. The time we intervened, we made a mess of it, the IPKF. So here, it's a question of at least tamping our side down. The other point I'd like to make is the CPEC. Now, I do believe that China, Pakistan want to rev up the situation in our Kashmir in order to do something before we tamp it all down. Because we have a, you know, inverted commas, a right-wing government, though it follows a lot of welfare policies as well, so it's a bit difficult to call it right-wing.
Well, that, of course, is a personal understanding, but
yeah,
go ahead.
But, you know, earlier it was Hindutva, right-wing sort of government. Now, it's not so easy to slot it because it's taken over.
That's a larger debate, but
yeah,
yes.
taken over the sort of platform of the Congress and others who kind of welfareism. But this government is definitely taking a more muscular stance in any case compared to the last government. Having said that, do we stop here? If we stop here, we're going to lose the battle of hearts and minds in Kashmir, which exists because there are a lot of Kashmiris who are joining forces with the Indian side, joining the armed forces, joining the police.
7% polling figures, that itself.
Yeah, but that is because if you scare people, I come from Bengal, and I was a young person when the Naxalite movement happened. People don't want to come out of their houses to get shot. It's got nothing to do with what they feel.
You've raised a very important point, that of China. In fact, Ambassador Mukherjee, do you think that's one of the reactions that we should be actively looking out for? Because many analysts have been saying that this is a message to all the states which have been pandering to terror. One of the states is Pakistan, considering this bomb was exploded on the Afpak region as well, as to how China is likely to respond to it.
Listen, if we are going to start to have a debate on the situation, the problem we face in Kashmir, and the nexus of that problem with Pakistan, our traditional hostile neighbor, and what it's up to in Kashmir, as well as the China-Pakistan nexus, I'd be happy to have that debate separately. What we are discussing now is not to be linked with that. If you're discussing the specific ramifications of the escalation of the kind of weaponry that is being used by the United States, the kind of tactics that is being used by the US in a conflict situation in Afghanistan, I would be extremely hesitant to draw parallels or lessons from that event to what we are facing in Kashmir. What the NATO force earlier, now the American troops in Afghanistan are involved is an armed conflict with armed insurgents groups, terrorist groups, virtually an army, even if it's a motley ragtag army in Afghanistan. What we are facing in Kashmir is not an army that has occupied bits of Kashmir. It is our own people who are waging, let's say, a war against the state. It's an insurgency, it's militants. It's a totally different scenario. So let's not get carried away and start getting drawing all kinds of parallels and lessons from the event in Afghanistan. What I'd like to still remain focused on is what happened there some hours ago. And frankly, I think we still have to see whether it actually is a paradigm shift in their tactics or not. I think the one thing that I do believe from all kinds of reports that have come out from the mess that is happening in the Middle East, the kind of president that Donald Trump is showing himself to be in terms of his actions, not just his words. His words have become almost meaningless because, seconds or minutes or hours after he says something, he does his U-turn using every kind of hyperbole. So I think what it goes to show is that Donald Trump's presidency has decided that in these conflict situations, sometimes if some things are needed which are drastic, which may cause civilian deaths, which may lead to situations which at other times would have led to massive criticisms of the US, that these just have to be shrugged off, that the message is controlled by them, and that as long as those civilian deaths are not American, these things are okay.
Well, unfortunately, that is the truth. However, Ambassador, a quick word also on, you said that, I agree with you personally speaking, that the parallels may just be a bit far-fetched. But when we are looking at United States specifically, whom is this message going out to? Is it just limited to Afghanistan? Do you think there's a larger message that it's sending out across to North Korea? We know how the situations are. And also, I'd like you to respond to the first reaction which came out from Russia saying that we have a bomb which is 4 times more powerful. What is happening in the world of global diplomacy here with this strike?
Well, I would say that this event in Afghanistan is not to deliver a global message. It's a response to a scared military commander on the field who knows that if he sends his troops in to a heavily fortified IS camp, many American soldiers would die, and therefore he whistles in this mother of all bombs to carpet bomb the area, remove the IEDs and mines that surround that area so that his troops have a safe entry. What is a message is the airstrike that Trump ordered in Syria following the reports on the Syrian government's use of chemical weapons there, that the US will be prepared to strike swiftly, in a situation which it considers intolerable. As far as your question on Putin and Trump is concerned, and Russia's response, look, there is a face-off that is getting stronger and stronger every day. Putin is facing an election next year, but he remains probably the most popular leader within his country worldwide. Trump, starting with, for whatever reasons, whatever murky reasons, as being very fond of Putin, has now, of course, switched gears as the situation has completely changed. And you are seeing almost a reversion to the Cold War days in terms of the standoff between Russia and America, in terms of Europe, the Middle East, where they are locked in direct conflict virtually, in spite of talks. The Tillerson Lavrov talks have failed completely. So that's another scenario. But the event in Afghanistan, I don't think is a global message. It's a military commander, as usual, deciding that his troops need to be, that he cannot order his troops into a heavily fortified area and risk a lot of casualties. And therefore, he whistles in a very, very powerful bomb to sanitize the area.
Very interesting there. Mr. Mukherjee, you wanted to come in, you completely disagreed, it seems.
No, Ambassador Mukherjee, this is the most powerful bomb in the American arsenal, short of a nuclear bomb. And yes, the local area commander may well have said that, look, I can't get these chaps out of the cave, and Nangarhar has been the area in which they even had Osama hold up for a while, and a lot of casualties have happened because of the caves. So that is certainly one part of it. But the decision to drop this bomb was taken, no doubt, in my mind, at a much higher level. Having said that, one thing we haven't discussed is the elephant in the room, the whole business of the CPEC, China, North Korea, where, you know, the American task force combined with the Japanese are steaming or have steamed into North Korean waters. A preemptive strike there is quite likely. And with Pyongyang saying that I'm going to let off my nuclear test bomb, he said it 2 days ago, and he evacuated 600,000 people from Pyongyang. This is not an isolated...
It's not an isolated picture, is what Mr. Gautam Mukherjee is saying. However, Ambassador Mukherjee, I'm sure, does not per se agree with it, but it's a larger discussion. We need to quickly take a short break. However, request you, Ashish, to stay with us. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee and, of course, Ambassador Mukherjee, do stay on.